For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al-Ahram Managing Editor, Mr. Mohamed Ezz El-Din. Welcome to Q News. Mr. Ezz El-Din, what particular elements do you think have led to President Donald Trump's belief that a ceasefire could be reached within a week?
Thank you so much for having me on Q News. Definitely, let me say that today is so much like yesterday. At first, there were suggestions called the deal of the century, and they failed, and they were rejected by most of the Arab states, on top of which the Palestinian authorities. These suggestions relied mainly on the US president intentions, in addition to annexing more lands from the West Bank under the pretense of peace, and this was followed by a ceasefire. Of course, there is a scheme that is being revived once again, and it's not mainly about the ceasefire. Israel, during its war on Iran for 12 or 13 days, they killed more than 1,000 Palestinians. Half of them were heading to obtain humanitarian aid. As the Israeli war never stopped, not for one day, on Gaza during its war with Iran. So this new proposal, that long-awaited proposal, and the world is waiting for more details. But the beginnings that we are seeing make it very difficult to be reached, as Israel never committed to a ceasefire, and they will keep killing Palestinians and annexing more lands. And today, 85 have fallen killed. Only today they were heading to obtain humanitarian aid. We hope, of course, for a ceasefire agreement, but I think that the main reason or purpose is not only to portray Trump as a man of peace and that the United States is capable of imposing peace, but it's also economic gains by engaging new states to the Abrahamic Accords, in addition to concluding deals with the states that already signed in 2020.
So what is your perspective on UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' criticism of the US-supported aid efforts in Gaza? How might this criticism shape future aid approaches?
Of course, what is happening with the aid distribution in Gaza is a catastrophe with all meanings. These are now death traps. The death traps is a term coined by the Palestinians to describe these humanitarian aid distribution points, and there are ongoing fire by the Israeli troops on those who approach the aid points. Only 1 hour or 2 hours maximum are designated for each day for Palestinians to obtain aid. They also have to walk for several kilometers, around 10 kilometers or even more, to obtain aid, and there are no cars to be operated or any vehicles. In addition, they only give each family one box. The humanitarian aid is not sufficient, the killing machine is going, and the international community stands helpless, as the international organizations were prevented from intervening despite of all the criticism directed by the United Nations and the World Health Organizations and the Red Cross, Red Crescent, and several other entities that demand the return of the humanitarian aid distribution mechanisms accredited internationally with the complete deterioration of the healthcare system in Gaza and the ongoing targeting of medical staff and facilities by the occupation and killing their personnel without discrimination. There must be international intervention with the grave failure of the distribution points backed by or supervised by the United States civil administration, and most of the supervisors are with military backgrounds.
So, in what ways does the militarization of aid distribution, as highlighted by Guterres, as described by the Palestinians as death traps, actually impact the safety and effectiveness of humanitarian initiatives in conflict areas like Gaza?
Definitely, this needs first for the deprived, distressed Gazans not obtaining aid, in addition to their delay because they have to walk very long distances, and they are also exposed to death and killing on a daily basis, and also very short amount of hours. Like 1 hour is designated daily for all Palestinians to obtain aid, and there are instructions that any citizen that would walk out of the route drawn by the occupation troops will be rightfully shot, and these zones were divided by the troops. In addition, that the volume of aid is significantly insufficient, with no sign of professionalism, and they are only distributing food, and there is need for medical supplies and fuels, as tens of commodities and aid elements that are life-saving are being withheld, especially these used for lighting or for food or for cooking.
Well, that was Mr. Mohamed Ezz El-Din from Cairo. He is Al Ahram managing editor. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our special coverage for tonight. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.